Hello everyone, I'm Joseph Roberson, aka Professor Joe, of both King Talk Podcast and the Professor Joe Show. Today you're watching the Professor Joe Show with Keasuc Hill as we continue our series, Afterlife. And today we'll be talking about gangs and media. What's up, Key? How we doing? We blessed?
I'm doing good. I'm blessed, man.
I appreciate you, my king. I appreciate you. All right, can I jump right in?
Please do.
Okay, so and I appreciate you because the irony is, even though we're doing this for this purpose, I still appreciate, for my own edification, my discussions with you, because you help bring clarity to a lot of these thoughts I have running around in my head. So years ago, this might have been over a decade, Key, I started writing down things I thought, like, okay, if you're going to have a gang, if it's a gang, then these are the rules that should be applied within your gang, right? And for some reason, I don't know why terminology matters to me, but I thought to your constituents, right? Mm-hmm. But one of the things I was thinking is this, like, for instance, in some form or fashion, everyone needs to be educated. That doesn't mean formal education, but in some form or fashion, everybody needs to be educated on life, on something, need to be thinkers, right? Okay, now, some people will look at that as like, okay, well, hold on. If you're saying this, you're a proponent for gangs, like you. And I was thinking to myself, like, no, not at all. But it's just that based on my own life and growing up, I just don't know if there ever be a world without them. I don't know, because we label things, or society labels things, gangs, right? Mm-hmm. But it ain't had to be a gang. This could be a family. This could be a neighborhood of people who grew up together. This could be a young group of men who, and it's going to be labeled that, but in the end, all it is generally, or began as some group of people who had some concern for each other's well-being, right. And then it begins to take on a certain identity or a certain life. So anyway, I mean, what's your thoughts about that, my brother? Because I just believe, like, gang culture is not going anywhere.
You know, like you was talking about, gangs, the whole word gang.
Right.
You know, it has this negative connotation.
Right.
You know, and media is used oftentimes to perpetuate that view, that perception of what it is. If you notice, the Ku Klux Klan isn't classified as a gang.
But they are.
But it's the oldest gang that's known to this, society.
Right.
In fact, it doesn't even become classified as a disruptive group.
Oh, wow.
And we can go any deeper. They'll never be classified as urban terrorists or homegrown terrorists. But everything that they do, everything that they are, everything that, makes them who they are all of those things. Yeah. Disruptive groups, terrorists, gangs, they're all that. But we don't want to add that stigma to them because we want you to perceive something different.
Okay.
Because if we start talking about them as gangs and thugs, that's another word that likes to get thrown around. If we start considering them as gangs and thugs, what does that say about our Congress, who are also Klan members?
Right.
What does that say about our police force?
A history of politicians who have also been.
We got judges, sitting judges that were a part of the Ku Klux Klan.
Hey, so since you mentioned too, LAP, well, I don't know if you just said LAPD, but said police departments. Yeah. But I was going to say, it's very clearly understood that there's a subculture, a gang subculture in every law enforcement agency.
Law enforcement. Yeah. But pay attention to the word gang. Like I said, who is it referred to?
Right.
And you got to ask that, Were we street gangs? Okay, we'll use that word, street gangs. But we got to remember the street gangs weren't gangs then.
Right.
They didn't classify themselves as gangs. The gangs that we understand in California, as far as the Bloods and Crips go, was done in response to spook hunters, which was a white gang.
Okay.
This was a white gang.
Just for clarity of anyone listening, it was actually called the Spook Hunters.
Okay. This is verifiable information. Okay. So
we're a generation able to Google things.
Yeah.
Go get your Google on.
Verifiable information. So when Raymond and Tookie and them, came up with the Bloods and Crips, it was in response to the spook hunters. Right. And we don't like to add that part to history when we talk about it. You'll hear it here and there and there. In fact, you got Tookie Williams, who talked about that, who put that out there. Look, man, we were beefing with these people, when it first came down, and then it became, more of the street orientation that you see today.
Right.
Where the bravado and the hyper masculinity jumped in, and I'm careful with that because I think that there's an attack on male masculinity right now. So,
hey, so you mentioned that too. Not to get off topic, but I hear you because there are some modifications we can make to our understanding of masculinity, but you still have to be careful when you talk about certain things because there's an attempt in media to add terminologies to things.
There's an agenda.
And if you speak on it with this particular vernacular or terminology, it's often used to contribute to that agenda versus, hey, I just want to have a healthy discussion on how we can improve and grow as
so,
people.
And it's a trip that popped in my head when I thought about it because that has been something on my mind and I've been seeing.
And there's a responsibility when we speak.
Yeah. So, but what I like to point out, just to stay on topic, is that these youth were responding to an attack on their community.
Youth. I think some people don't really have that perspective, like how old they were when you talk about someone like Tookie and when
they were teenagers.
Okay.
They were kids. They were teenagers. They will be classified like we were classified in today as youth.
Right.
But when we think of, Tookie and Raymond and we think of grown men.
Right.
Grown men running some type of street enterprises, right?
Hey, and then add to it too, not just grown men who also, there's some level of love and brotherhood and sense of community to them. It's menacing men.
Right.
That's the vision the media presents.
Yeah, because who is it menacing to?
Right.
You got to think. Remember, who is the media addressing? Whenever you watch the media, you got to ask yourself, who, when, what, where, why, how. Right? Who are you addressing? Who are you talking? When you see commercials that come on in the day, in the afternoon, if you notice, a lot of it has to do with cleaning supplies for homes and diapers and all of this stuff that would be geared to who they perceive to be in the home at that time. Right? Housewives, etc. But when it gets later into the evening, now it becomes more like beer and all of these bikini commercials, and it seems a little bit. Now you're geared towards grown men. You're talking, and whenever Saturday mornings, you see cartoons all day and all the different cereals and toys. So the media is marketing to someone. And the same applies when we turn on CNN and Fox News, and you're talking to someone. When I turn on Fox, I know that I'm going to get a conservative perspective. You know what I'm saying? And then when I turn on CNN or MSNBC, I know that I'm going to get a more liberal perspective.
With a determined intent, too, to what's being presented.
So when the gangs and when we are being, presented to the world, you got to, look at who they're presenting us to. Who benefits from it and what message are you trying to get across.
Gotcha.
You see what I'm saying? So when you go into the history of the gangs in specifically California, because I've never left California, so it's hard for me to speak on Chicago. And, even though their gang situation is just as traditional and historical as you find those in California, probably even more so, because Chicago was known for its gangs. Not just that, New York was known for its gangs at that time. But when we think about gangs now, we think primarily California because of the blood and Crip.
And how it's permeated the fabric of the country. And even now we can say internationally.
Not just Bloods and Crips, the Mexican, population also.
As well.
Because that gave birth to a culture. A culture that has been affected, in El Salvador. You got South America, you got Southsiders or Sureño 13, which are Southern Mexican gangs out of Los Angeles in South America. You got Bloods and Crips in Africa. When you start looking at this type of stuff, we're talking about international,
Right,
transcendence. It has to be addressed. It has to be looked at. And there's some responsibility that has to come with that.
Right.
But I look at it now and I say, who's benefit? See, when I was gangbanging, we didn't have media. We had, the news,
Right.
and that was just tell you who was getting shot that day. But we didn't have social media.
How do you think so? What are the implications of social media as it relates to that? Because that's one of my concerns is that
it's entertaining.
Yeah, it's almost, gang culture is almost taken a turn into this loose relationship, if I even use the word loose, with pop culture. And I don't think a lot of young people, I mean, you know me well, so I really push this agenda that I use the word square. Some people who know my background, in a loving way, argue with me about whether I really get to qualify as square, but that's the agenda I'm pushing, that, hey, this is the way you should approach life, because thank you, Jehovah, I'm blessed to have my freedom, despite some poor discretion in my decision making as a youth. And I just look at young people like, nah, your level of getting involvement with things is not with a clear understanding of the potential consequences and implications.
No, there's no consequences. Because it's all entertainment, like I'm saying. The difference between gangs then and the gangs now is a person's reputation back then depended on what you did in the streets.
Right.
Only the community knew about you.
Right.
You see?
Right.
Not even the neighboring, your rival gang might know about you if you start going into, your reputation start moving into their community. But other people across town, they didn't know about you. You wasn't that popular person until you were in your community, in your village.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Or until you went to prison and enough people from
that's
other
a whole
places.
nother thing.
Right.
Prison is a whole nother culture. That's talking about something, even though it's not a whole nother culture. It's the primary culture. It's headquarters. It's like the UN. Prison is the UN for all gang members in California, right? So, but when you're dealing in your prospective nations or your prospective communities, you were only known within that community.
Right.
And see, within that community, how much can you be a villain if the people that know you are family members?
Right.
The people that know you knew your grandparents.
Right.
They knew your aunties, your uncles, your mothers.
There was a couple people who was perceived as
there was a couple that had to go. But we dealt with them.
Yeah.
You see, calling the police was always an outside thing. That was inviting outsiders into your problems.
Right.
See, we had this thing about ourselves, about our culture back then, it was always between us.
Right.
Whatever happened in the household stayed within the household. Yeah. We didn't go out in the streets and air out what we had going on in the household.
Right.
The same thing applied within the community. While we were in the community, we didn't air out all of our problems to neighboring communities. We dealt with whatever we were dealing with within our community. And at that time, to call the police, which you got to understand the history of the police, they were slave patrol, who ended up becoming police patrol. You know what I'm saying? And the reason why they became police is because they became politicized. The word police comes from the word policy and politics. It's all the same thing, right? So, but we don't trip off of that.
We'll get in that whole history on another episode.
that's something else. But when we understand that, then we understand that to call the police into our communities was to invite outsiders into our affairs, especially outsiders that meant us no harm. I mean, meant us no
there was
help.
No genuine
there was nothing
concern
but harm
for the well-being.
Exactly.
Of
that's why still to this day they come in shooting. You know what I'm saying? Because their objective was to keep us in our place, not to protect and serve us.
Hey, I even have my thoughts about that, and I'll save it for another episode. But that's where I feel that it's important that those who police your community live within your community.
Yeah, that's right. Now we get into what I'm saying.
And that's a whole different discussion.
The Crips were a community-based organization that was established to use to police our own community.
Right.
You dig where I'm coming from?
Gotcha.
But outside sources labeled it gangs. And they labeled it that way, put it in the newspaper that way, perpetuated that way, to the point where we became that way.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Almost a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Man, you said enough, man.
Some people don't realize, like I grew up and realized one day, because I had my own, for lack of a better word, level of dysfunction with understanding, Joseph, what does it mean to you to be a young, I mean, I'm sensitive about using this word, a young black man, because I don't know association with it black, right? But in the sense of how that word is used to describe my community. But that being said, so I began to think like, okay, what does it mean to be true to my culture? And all of a sudden I realized like every message or everything I believe is a message I've received from media about what I'm supposed to be.
Exactly. They control your perception. They took over hip hop.
And that
they
was,
took over, our black TV shows, the BET.
Right,
they bought
right.
that out.
and some people don't realize that though. Like
Bill
your own
Cosby decided to buy
perception-
NBC and went to jail. Right.
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson dead.
Hey.
Prince dead. Anytime you start moving into that area of power and influence,
Yeah.
where you start to control the
Yeah.
perception of the population,
It's gonna be an issue.
you got to go. And this is what happened. Now, even to this day, like I was saying, the gangs back then,
Break it down.
you had to earn your reputation
Right.
with action based on what you did or did not do.
Not social media followers.
No, it wasn't. Your reputation preceded you based on your action.
Right. Right.
Now, that's not the case.
Right.
Now your reputation is based on how many followers you have
Right, right.
on social media.
Yeah.
Your reputation is based on how well can you deliver this character on camera.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? But the idea, and this is why what us being in prison and serving so much time started seeing this flip and transitional flip is when we started watching youngsters come into the prison. And they were gang members, but they had no concept on, gang, they had no heart. It was fear. I had never understood paralyzing fear until I started witnessing this next generation of youth coming into the prison. Because before that, it was all entertainment. You see, I can be who I want to be on Instagram.
Yeah,
I can be who I want to be on Facebook. You put that camera in front of me and put some actors behind me dressed in red and blue and bounce around and make me bugs. I can be that. I can do that.
Right.
But when it comes down to hand-to-hand combat, where you got to deal, like Cube said, deal with the Crips and the Bloods by hand, G, plus the Black Gorilla family, you know what I'm saying? And the North Side don't like no side. You know what I'm saying? And when you got to deal with that hand to hand, it changes your perception of who you are, who you thought you were.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And a lot of people were falling victim to their own characters.
Right.
And that's the problem. Tekashi 6ix9ine is an example of that.
Situation.
Tekashi 6ix9ine, prime example. You are a victim of your own character.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? If you're rapping about doing all of this criminal stuff, you ain't doing it.
Yeah.
Because some of those crimes, there's no statute of limitation.
And hey, look. And if you are at that moment, that's not a wise move, and you've created an inevitable outcome for yourself. No. I'll give you another thing that because I've had to deal with the realities of true face-to-face interaction with men, whether they're friend or foe, over my lifetime, I'm very, very, very big on respect. Like, I take the initiative to show all people respect because I understand the potential implications of demonstrating.
A lot of people have died for
that,
and we don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
What does respect mean, honestly? Literally.
For me, at least without, as you posed the question, it makes me want to think, but if I had to give an immediate answer, for me to respect people means to treat them with a level of honor and dignity where they see that I look at you as, in terms of the value of my life, as a peer. I look at you as an equal, and I'm trying, even if I make a mistake, there's no malintent because I desire to treat you with honor and respect. And if I do something, educate me to it, and I can be humble. And for
that
me,
sounds more like self-dignity.
Oh wow, that's deep.
You see what I'm saying?
That's deep.
That's self-dignity.
Okay.
To treat people and expect those things that you just mentioned to other people is a dignity within yourself. And only a dignified person can dig into there and even expect that type of characters out of somebody else. If you're not dignified, you won't see those things. Yeah. Respect, on the other hand, is a compound word. Re means to do again.
Okay.
Spec comes from the word spectacle, to see.
Okay.
So respect means to look again.
Oh, that's deep. That's deep.
To look again.
Hey, my brother, I told you
and
always add some insights to some stuff.
seriously,
You
but we don't trip off of the power of that.
Right.
And here we are dying for it.
Yeah.
We're dying to be seen. I want you to respect me. All you're saying is I want you to look at me again.
Oh,
because your first look might not have been to me. You know what I'm saying? That you perceived of. Look at me again.
Okay.
And this time when you look at me with full eyes. Look at me with complete eyes.
Yeah.
So if I say I respect you, I'm saying I'm looking at you again. This time with complete eyes, with new eyes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Spectacles.
Yeah.
When you put on your glasses, those are called spectacles.
Real quick, I gotta say this to everyone. So before we started today's episode, I was talking with Key and acknowledging to him, my brother, half of this is because I know society needs this information. But half of it is for me, my brother. Every time we talk, I walk away with a different understanding of something. So last time I posted what we were talking about, I wanted people to understand, in our society we had this awe for formal education, but have no concept of really what it means to be educated. So I'm appreciative of talking to you just because, my brother, I really feed off it. So real quick, I had surgery yesterday. I'm still in pain. I'm hurting. But my brother, I couldn't even miss this opportunity to interact with you because it edifies my soul. My brother, I'm in discomfort right now physically, but in terms of I'm about to miss out on me and Key talking. Also, I feel like the world waits for no one, my brother, and my life is blessed where I need this information to be out there because I don't know if it'll affect the thinking of another person on earth that might save a life. And right now there's someone out there living in desperation, and if we keep putting this out there, then I'm at least giving the universe something and the universe can do with it as it may, that it might save a life, and that can't wait. But that's just that. I'm sorry, my brother, when you started talking to me about the respect and you broke it down in terms of root words, I'm like, okay, dang it, I need to go back and look some things up. But go ahead, Keith.
But it's true. We die over it.
Yeah.
But we're not. We'll kill over it. We'll die over it. But we don't have an understanding of what we're killing and dying over actually.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We're just moving. We're moving like automatons.
Right.
We just go with it. And that's the thing about social media. You just go with it. Whatever's famous on the.
It has a life of its own.
It has a life. But if you go back and you understand this, you understand also how it can affect you politically, how it can affect you socially, how it takes away certain liberties, human liberties. Yeah. If you're not careful, if you're conscious of, everything that's on social media, it's a trip because when I post social media, I'm not so much caught up on what I see on social media. I'm more concerned about what I'm putting into it.
Right, most definitely.
You see what I'm saying? Always what I'm putting on. And I tell my brother, go look at mine, because he one time he spazzed out over his social media. This stuff is crazy. And I said, bro, it's what you make it.
Yeah.
See, it's not crazy to me because I'm not in it for that. It's not my life.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
I hear you.
It's exactly what it is. It's a tool. It's something used to perpetuate something, to deliver something. Right. So what am I giving? That's what I look at.
And I'm very thoughtful about what I put on there because I use it to, even if I do share information related to my personal family, which I will do, right? But I'm using it I'm still very thoughtful about it because I understand the potential implications to myself and my family, but also to others in terms of, what am I feeding their mind? The other thing I found very powerful is this though. At first, I felt guilty about if someone did a friend request and I didn't really want to accept it but then one of the things I realized is like, no, I've earned the right. And it's a powerful privilege because everyone doesn't have it. I've earned the right in every aspect of my life to determine who has access to me. So, and not everyone gets that privilege, but I've put myself in a position where I now have that privilege where, for the most part, and I maintain that on social media as well. If there's someone, who's, I will use the word toxic to describe some people, right? And just what they're sharing or putting on is unhealthy. You can't have access to me because I don't need to feed people. I don't want to feed my mind.
A lot of toxicity out there. But we always talk about, and I always say why. Remember, I always ask you why. Yeah. Because we can talk about the what all day,
But at the end of the day, there needs to be understanding.
But at the end of the day, that's where I go to bed, with the why. You know, if I go through something, I know the what I just went through.
Yeah.
I know the how I just came through it.
Gotcha.
But the why, you know, why? What did I learn from it? Why did I go through it? You know, what was the cause and effect? You know, what did I do to cause this to come this way? And if I didn't do much of anything, then why did it come to me at that time? And what do I need to learn, you know, from it?
Yeah.
And that's a healthy way of thinking every day.
And
but we don't have
processing
that.
life. But a lot of
We
people
don't have
don't.
that.
A lot of people, there's these terms that I talk about a lot with my students. And, you know, basically the point of it is some people feel that they have an internal locus of control where they can see the things happening in my life are in part, in large part, if not entirely, based on the implications of my behaviors, my actions, how did I invite this in life, while some people who have an external locus of control are damn near passive observers in their own life, where that's how they feel, where they never look to see on any level, how did I participate in allowing this contact with me, this action or interaction in my life?
Do you know the difference between a human and a robot?
No, break it down to me.
Or a cyborg.
What's that?
Cyborg is half human robot.
Oh, okay.
Use that. But the difference is passion. And we live in a society where passion is being undermined. Think about it. They've taken art out of schools.
Yes.
They've taken vocation. See, vocation develops hobby. Things to work with your hand, craftsmanship.
A lot of humanity type courses have disappeared.
All of it's being
things that really examine our
humanity.
Our human existence.
Yes,
our self identity.
Taken out of schools. You know, and it's amazing when and they understand the power of art.
Yeah.
See, they understand that deeply.
And what's left in a lot of the educational system is not really all that meaningful. I remember when we used to study history, they used to explain, well, you study history so you don't repeat its mistakes. And I'm thinking like, well, obviously that's not working that well right now, you know? So
just like when they say knowledge is power, I always ask them, why are we so powerless?
Yeah. And we don't study things like financial literacy. And I watch so many young people make decisions. And watch this, that's not even young people. I only say young people because I have more of a concern for young people. That's where I feel I have to make a determined effort with what I do in my life. But I could say people in general. I see people my age who still show no discipline, no literacy in how they address their finances. And yet, such to the point where I wanted to post something the other day. I didn't get to yet. Some people don't realize once I post something, I've generally thought about this for 3 to 6 months before I actually articulated it in words. But for some people, reason as it relates to how we spend our money, people think they deserve something. Like you know, and I get it. We could say you deserve something, but at the end of the day, have you earned the financial resources to get it in a way that doesn't compromise the rest of your existence?
Not so much deserve, I think I would say entitled.
Yeah, that too.
Because deservance, you know, comes for, like you said, the amount of effort you pull into something.
Right.
Now, if you putting into something and you're not getting it back, there are some people out there that deserve it. Because there are some mothers out there, man, that's been working sun up to sundown, and they should be, man, you know,
I hear that.
millionaires by now.
I hear that.
As much time and energy that they didn't put in a lot of these establishments in order to keep a roof over them and their kids' head. And they deserve it. There are teachers, you know, who are not getting paid what they should be getting
most
paid.
Definitely.
You know, for the services that they provide in society. They deserve it.
Society don't want to compensate them because they're educators. You
got people like Trump up there, though. Do he deserve that?
Hey, I would say no. I would say he's learned to manipulate the system to his benefit, and some people walk away acting like that somehow.
Because
equates to deserving.
You got to think, man. The upper echelon, the aristocracy.
Yeah.
They're full of the inheritors or the undeserving.
Right. Hey, there used to be a saying that behind
the inheritors of the undeserving.
Behind every great wealth is a great crime. Yeah. And if people really begin to look at the histories of these families, that's so crazy to me too. So we talking about gangs, gang culture, media, and we talk about how different families, especially if you talk about inner city, urban environments, would be perceived. But then you got a family like the Kennedy family who was celebrated. This is an American family, right? And
Rockefeller.
Yeah.
You know, you can go on and on, man, and you know,
Hey, not to knock their family, you know, not to knock they ain't nothing personal. We're just
No, I'm
talking.
knocking their family. I don't bite my tongue too much.
But I'm just saying,
I mean, because you've inherited something.
right.
And you've inherited
Right.
something